The honourable member for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague, the Shadow Minister for Veterans Affairs, for bringing this issue forward to the House today. I'd just like to draw attention and maybe elaborate more on an organization, a not-for-profit here in Ontario, Ruff to Remember, who just this year, they've been doing things for over 15 years, but they conducted their Road to Recovery March that they did this year as part of Operation Leave the Streets Behind, where they did the whole Bruce Trail from Tobermory right down to basically Niagara Falls, over 900 kilometers this summer, and really want to pay tribute to Lino and Joey, who were the two people that did it all. I had the privilege of joining them for a little over 10 kilometers in my riding. I want to thank the member for Flamborough-Glanbrook who joined them as well for part of that march. And I did inform all MPs that were part of the trail this year to get out there. And so just draw attention that we got volunteers, veterans, and average Canadian citizens. No, I won't say average Canadian citizens, phenomenal Canadian citizens that are standing up for our veterans. And I'd just like my honourable colleague to elaborate why it's so important for the Liberal government to actually do more to get our veterans off the streets. Thank you.
The honourable member for Banff Airdrie.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the member himself for his service to our country, and that is something that this Liberal government has failed to do in terms of their actions. And I'm glad he highlighted that there are so many groups, and he mentioned the one in his writing, but there are so many groups out there across this country who are picking up the slack. They're filling needs this government isn't ensuring. This Liberal government isn't ensuring are being filled. And I'm proud of so many Canadians who are doing just that. But they shouldn't have to do that. The government should ensure that those needs are being provided. I'll give an example. Recently, discussing this training for, as I mentioned earlier, that is needed for employees at Veterans Affairs to ensure that we never have an instance again where a veteran has suggested that maybe they should consider assisted suicide. There's an organization out there, Wounded Warriors is an organization that has the ability they could provide that training tomorrow. And the government is aware that could be the case, but they're not engaging that. This is a situation where the government is not doing enough to serve the needs of our veterans, and Canadians and organizations across this country are having to step up and make sure that veterans have their needs filled. They're having to pay for veterans to get the mental health supports they need, to have physical supports they need, and this government is not doing it. So people are stepping up across the country to make sure it happens.
Right. Oh.
I'd like to thank the member for his speech. It is obvious that he's concerned about our veterans. And why does he think that the CEO of Vets Canada said earlier this week
have expressed that they don't feel valued, they don't feel important? She's referring to veterans. These are men and women who put their lives on the line for our country, so I think we owe them a lot more than what we're providing. Pourquoi elle a dit ça?
Why did she say that, in his opinion? The honour member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. I agree with my colleague, and I agree with the statement he just mentioned. We're talking about lodging people, everyone who's vulnerable in Canada. If we talk about veterans, that's very important. But women who are victims of domestic violence, people who are drug users also who are often veterans. One of the problems related to veterans is often mental health. They have PTSD, and we need federal investment in health. We need health care transfers if we want to help people. It's an epidemic with respect to suicide, mental health, people who are committing suicide in emergency rooms in Quebec. And the federal government says, no, we're just going to write you a check if you do that and add strings. The federal government does not mention any hospitals, train any nurses, but they want to tell the province how they should manage their healthcare systems. It doesn't make sense.
The honourable member Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. A brief question.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Speaker. So I know the NDP members in the Edmonton area. He's close to base Edmonton. And I'm just wondering if he could elaborate on how big of a challenge this is in his own riding with homeless veterans. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton-Griesbach has 1 minute to respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank my honourable colleague not only for the question but for his service as well. I know that Indigenous women and other minority groups are often across Edmonton-Griesba are the ones seen and visibly seen across the community in tents and on the street. But what we don't often see is that some of these members are veterans. Some of them don't want to come forward and self-identify as veterans because of the shame associated with the condition of their living. But that's not their fault, Madam Speaker. That is the fault of the system that failed them. What we're seeing is when that transition period comes, we see that there's a massive drop-off, almost like going off a ledge, where they seem to plummet and not find the support they need. And so, Madam Speaker, what has happened is this grassroots movement across Edmonton. We have the Edmonton Veterans Association, for example, that's picked up the pieces to identify these veterans, to house them, to clothe them, to feed them, to provide that peer support, and to unite them with community. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.